Oh dear, it's going to
It's
be one of these
Christmas!
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Marty, alongside Dave,
Hello.
Aaron,
Hey.
and John.
Hello, everyone, and Merry Christmas!
It's going to be one of those days.
I
Clearly,
can't believe that
wasn't-
you sat there and sat with the jingle bells the whole time for that whole
I know.
theme music.
Obviously, when I was setting up the studio for today's recording, I forgot that we had set the intro to the temporarily to the Christmas one. So yeah, that was a bit silly.
Bringing joy everywhere we go.
That's it.
So that there we go. So I remember for next time.
We're going to do a
Boys,
recap of Christmas, right? We're going to talk about Christmas presents. We're going to talk about what we did. So, yeah.
probably
It's basically the
yeah,
Late Late Show, but in the disguise of an ice hockey podcast.
exactly. Boys, how's it going? Dave, how are you doing?
Good. Had a shave. Feel weird. Freezing.
Yeah, you look
I was going to ask why one of your sons was presenting the podcast with us tonight.
you do look like you're about 12 years old. You look like
Yeah.
Aaron. Aaron, how you doing?
I'm not feeling like I'm 12-year-old. I'm getting old. But all good. Good Christmas, good New Year. Of course, just like everyone. Which of the 4 bugs did you all get over the Christmas holiday? There was 4 flu.
I think I got
bugs,
3/4
but
of them.
You got 3. You got 3 of them. Yeah, I definitely got one.
I skipped them all, thankfully.
Oh, good job.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm lucky enough in that way. Yeah, can't complain. John, how about you? How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Nice. Busy and a quiet Christmas, if that makes sense. So busy family time down in the northeast in County Durham, and then back up here for a nice chilled out few days, just the 3 of us, before the madness of going back to work and back to nursery and, whatever bugs we didn't pick up before during that period. Now all kids are back together again, and it's time for Germ Central to come back into the house.
Fun
Unusual.
times.
You've
Fun
also looked
times.
forward to it.
I do indeed. I do. Boys, it has been a very busy Christmas and New Year period in the Elite League and right across the hockey world, I should say. It's been a lot of games being played. We always talk about the fact that that Christmas period always seems to be the really busy part of the season, where games just build up and build up and build up, and there just seems to be one after the other, and like literally days within days there's another game. And I think, John, your TikTok and your social media over the Christmas and New Year's period kind of showed that, the fact that like you were putting up a post every single time about there's like nearly every day there was something like we've got games today, and it was for a good nearly week. I think it was almost like a game nearly every single
I'll
day.
admit there were days. So I've got it set. I can pretty much do it off my phone now. So a couple of like decent little templates. So it's fairly quick to do. The one thing I'll like own up to is occasionally I just completely forget. And it was because that Christmas period, like you don't know if it's Tuesday or Sunday. So I completely lost track of what day it was, what stuff I had prepped, and then forgot to post them. Now, the generation after us will probably come and tell me that there's ways for me to schedule all this stuff. Listen, I'm not paying that much attention, if I'm totally honest. But yeah, if people are liking it, people are viewing it, they're getting a few hundred views. So listen, I'm happy with that.
Yep. Before we get stuck into our episode, before we start talking about what we like to call as the business end in inverted commas, which is probably the most cringy comment or cringy, thing you can say about hockey. But yes, when we get into the business end in inverted commas of the hockey season, before we get there, just quickly, because I don't want to forget about the fact that we've just been over Christmas, and Aaron, as you were mentioning about it, I'm sure maybe some people got some cool gifts. I don't know if anybody got any hockey themed ones. Anybody get anything before we move on? Dave, get anything this year?
I got my 25th anniversary jersey for my birthday.
Oh, nice.
So there you go. I didn't get anything for Christmas, but yeah, I got the 25th anniversary on slowly. You seen it already?
I did. It's very
shiny,
sparkly.
Sparkly. Yeah.
I got that too, actually, but I had mine hasn't arrived yet. I got stuff in the back. Got the number 14 in the back.
Oh, look at you showing off.
I got that. And Marty, you know about one of my gifts.
I do.
'Cause you were part of this. This is a gift that you cannot buy anywhere, which I think is really cool. Marty, can you tell him what? Can you remember what were you part of?
Now I'm gonna say all I'm gonna say is I don't fully. I think from what Ruth sent me are they coasters? Are they hexagon coasters with beer caps with Giants logos printed on the beer caps inside?
Yeah. So
Is that what they are?
I think the last 3 years, Ruth, my sister, has got really cool out there, especially Giants gifts. Like John, that Giants logo that's just over your shoulder, like that. We all got that because of a gift from that Ruth found on Etsy, right? She then got me last year. I think I showed you these last year.
Yes.
I haven't worn these out. Like look at those.
They're pristine. Look at them.
Like that. Look at that. That's awesome. Sorry for the people that are listening. They are giant shoes. Trainers with a
and
logo.
not giant shoes, as in like big size shoes. Because are pretty small.
Big shoes for a short guy.
The regular tiny shoes with Giants logos on them.
But this year, Ruth outdone herself by making coasters. And I really like it because with that new artwork that's up in the Odyssey with the Giants logo made of beer caps. I don't even know if Ruth knows that there is a Giants logo made of beer caps because that's fairly new. But yeah, so she made me 4 coasters with beer caps in the center, and like it's not like she went out and bought beer caps with the Giants logo on them. She had to print each of the Giants logos as decals, cut them out by hand, glue them to the beer cap, and then pour the resin all over them.
Yes. So that my only help
That's
was
dedication.
My only help was the fact that I got her a high def PNG version of the Giants logo. So that was all I did. But you're welcome.
But yeah, so the next time you're up, when we have a beer, your coaster will be a Giants beer cap coaster.
Nice. John, did you get anything?
No, this was a hockey-free sort of Christmas gifting period for me for the first time in a long time, actually.
Yeah, same for me, actually. I didn't get anything this year. Last year, I think I got a ridiculous number of Belfast Giants merchandise for Christmas. I got like a hat, I got a mug, I got the thermos flask and a water bottle. This year, I got absolutely nothing. So, yeah, it's quite like, oh, okay. But I might
I'll
gift
be honest,
myself.
mine was essentially by choice because I was asked, is there any merch or anything that you want? And actually, like, with probably one exception, one of the new jackets, there's really not anything that shouts to me, and I know you've got it. But I don't know, I've been underwhelmed. I think anyone who listens regularly will know that I have been regularly underwhelmed by our merchandise, and I think that's been my problem. Is just nothing screamed to me. The only issue I did have is after I told everyone don't buy me any Giants merch, I have had 2 Giants pens for, I want to say, at least 10 years. I was given them for Christmas 2 years apart, and I honestly used them every single day while I'm working here at this desk. They finally both gave up the ghost on the same day.
Oh no.
They both ran out, so I am now Giants penless for
I'll keep
the
an eye-
foreseeable.
Stand pens?
Do you know what? I'll keep an eye out for a pen for you, John, and if I see one in the merch stand, I'll buy you one and send it to you.
I've got to
Send
be
you
honest,
the
my
invoice.
work's gone downhill. Work's gone downhill. I just don't enjoy
Clearly.
writing as much.
Clearly. Boys, if it's okay with you, let's get stuck in and to our normal regular podcast and take a look across the Elite Ice Hockey League and the standings as they currently are on January 9th, 2025. So number sitting in top spot is the Cardiff Devils with 28 games played and 40 points, followed by the Belfast Giants in second with, let me just double check because I know John, I was listening to the podcast last time and there's a date. I'm just checking to see I've got the right one. I do. Belfast Giants are in second with 26 games played, 37 points. The Sheffield Steelers are in third with 26 games played, 34 points. The Nottingham Panthers sit in 4th with 26 games played, 33 points. Coventry Blaze are in 5th, 27 games played, 32 points. The Guildford Flames are in 6th with 27 games played, 31 points. Glasgow are in 7th, 26 games played, 24 points. And Dundee Stars are in 8th with 29 games played, 22 points. Manchester Storm are sitting in 9th with 25 games played, 21 points. And the Fife Flyers, propping up the league, really struggling, 26 games played and only 6 points with 22 losses in total. Oof. Let's start as we always do, and we'll go, Dave. Let's go with you first. Let's take a look at the top of the league. Cardiff Devils are continuing their form, sticking to the top. Haven't shifted majority of this season, but in saying that, with 28 games played and with Belfast and Sheffield 2 games in hand over the Cardiff Devils, Belfast are 3 points behind with 2 games behind, and Sheffield 34 points, 2 games behind. How tasty, should we say, does the top of the league look right now?
Even right down to Nottingham as well. 26 games with 33. There's still a lot to be played in there. Without all the cliches, there's still a lot of hockey to play. You know, it still could change anytime. But we did talk about this at the very beginning of the season, that Pete Russell he needed the extra year to sort of show what he can do with the team, and we're starting to see that. We knew coming into this year that he is a top quality coach, and we're starting to see that bear fruit. We'll see how they get on as we go further down this run. I think we're going to see a very tight end to the season, with at least those top 4 teams, maybe top 5, all vying for points, for that sort of top spot. Coventry, as we've seen in the past week, are definitely not to be taken lightly. Guildford in the past, even going down to 6th, have shown that they can go on a run. So, can
I interject in just exactly what you're talking about, Dave? Because in true Blue Peter fashion, can I jump in with one I made earlier here, because I think it illustrates a point. And I had
too much time on your hands.
I was just thinking, oh yeah, way too much. It's actually while I was off. So just in case anyone from work is watching this, I absolutely didn't do this in work time. Where the teams have gone over the first 50% of the season really intrigued me. And I'll be totally honest, the one thing I didn't quite like was it's actually really difficult to get historic information about the league positions week by week. So what I had to do was go back through the posts that the Elite League have put out. Now, they haven't done it every week. They've done it for 6 or 7 of them. So this is just a snapshot of those 6 or 7 from after the first week of the season. The first dots give you their opening position, and the last dots give you their current position since the games were played last weekend. So it's giving you a bit of a picture, but I think it's a pretty clear picture of what's going on. And it's incredibly basic, because I only know how to do so much when it comes to Excel and all this sort of stuff. But when you talk about consistency, we've joked for the first half of the season, you cannot sniff at the Cardiff Devils. They have never been dislodged from the top of the table. They are the only team with a button straight line from week 1 to right now where we are. And they have stayed consistently in top spot. Now, yes, this doesn't show the gaps. It doesn't show what the points difference is currently. But it's really, really interesting to see. What's more interesting is when you start looking at what trajectory some of the teams have been on as we've gone through. A couple of big surprises. Manchester Storm, we thought they were having a fantastic season until we got to about end of October, start of November. Look at the drop that they've taken down to 9th place now, and pretty much set in that 9th spot now. The same can be said of the Coventry Blaze. Dave, this is why I jumped in. You said about the Coventry Blaze, they're not slouches, but they've done what the Coventry Blaze traditionally do, is they have an iffy start, a really strong middle period, and then they start dropping away again. They are another team that seem to be fairly well rooted in that position that they are in. They look to be a fairly solid 4th or 5th place team.
Yes, you're saying that. The one thing I will say though is that both Coventry and also Guildford are still the two teams that are still taking those points, those crucial points off different teams. They're still are taking points off. So like you've got those 3 top teams. Dave, I'll throw Nottingham in because you mentioned Nottingham earlier. You've got those 3 top teams, Nottingham included, 4 top teams. But we were looking at, like, say, take as example the Belfast Giants. There was a whole thing around trying to take the second spot, the Sheffield Steelers, and it was a whole big thing around like points were taken from Sheffield to help the Giants move into that second spot and over one of those weeks in Christmas, because Guildford took points and then obviously Glasgow took points off Belfast as well over on Boxing Day, which was just. But yeah, this is fast. This is really good stuff, John. This is pretty interesting. Like when you look at the visual of like the trajectories of where these teams have been going. Yeah, that's pretty.
Can I throw out just a couple of more things that kind of really jumped out to me about the data when it was presented this way? Was the upwards trajectory of the Nottingham Panthers. You mentioned them. They're having a really, really strong resurgence. That looks like a squad. We know what they went through last season. Yep. A lot of change in Nottingham, and it looks like it's just taken a bit of time. And now that Nottingham team is discovering what they can do. We've seen that in the results that they've had over the last few weeks, especially over the Christmas period. They've done remarkably well. As well as the Belfast Giants. And I'm going to put the Giants there as well, because even though last weekend was not the sort of weekend that we want to see, 1 point from a potential 4, missed opportunity to go top of the league as well, which was heartbreaking to sit and watch through that past weekend. But they do look incredibly strong. And when you look at the other teams, yes, the Sheffield Steelers are starting to find their groove again after having a bit of a slump, but they're not on that same upwards trajectory. They look, unless they go on a big run, and it's going to take that. This is, long way around to make the point that I'm going to make here. These top points, it's going to take 1 or 2 of these teams to go on a run to make them be the standout potential league champions.
How come you're not pointing out the Clan there? While I appreciate that they're not top 5, top 4, you're seeing that again, that trajectory up from last. I appreciate the 5 Flyers are there now, but up to what's that, 6th, 7th? Could they have a run with the Guildford and overtake the Guildford Flames?
They could overtake the Guildford Flames, but my interest is at the top of the table. That middle of the table, really, the only interesting thing happening there is the battle for playoffs. To be totally honest, it's now a competition of who comes 9th. We know who's going to come 10th because the 5 Flyers are not going to move from there, and that's really disappointing to look at that line. Never been higher than 9th this season, in a season that should have promised so much. Retaining Tom Cullen, who's obviously now departed, and I think that's happened since our last podcast. The falling down into 10th, nothing else was going to happen. They're still on 6 points. Of course they're going to be sitting down in 10th. So now it's a fight about who ends up in 9th and who misses out on playoffs. Manchester look like the team that might, but there's a lot of hockey to play. Don't get me wrong. The Dundee Stars, a bit of a slide as well. At the top of the table, it's going to take a run of games for somebody to come out as a potential league champion. Down at the bottom, a run of losses could do exactly the same and could see you miss out entirely on playoffs. But it's the fact there's only one space now that these 9 teams are playing for. Well, 3 or 4 teams really are competing to not be in 9th place now.
John, before we have anyone else says anything, I want to say I absolutely love you, buddy. This is amazing. This is I've mentioned this so many times, but it really annoys me that I want to be able to go and see like what's the league done over week by week, and just have like a rotating slider or something like that. And we've talked about doing that on the web, because John, you used to put screenshots on the blogs, and that's how I previously did it. I just went to our own website and looked at the previous blogs to see what the standings were. This is great, John. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hopefully you keep adding to it.
I was stressing about trying to find league positionings and everything week to week without realizing how many podcasts have we done this season and how many times have I screenshotted the league tables.
Yeah. You've got it.
That's great. Like, so yeah, John, you're gonna have to keep doing this now every single week. So keep updating it.
I'll throw you back to the league table in the meantime.
I don't even think we need to talk much more about the league table. I think that
No,
graph
no, that
kind of
was awesome, dude.
helped us talk about everything. To be honest,
You're gonna
we've
you're
kind
gonna
of
tweet that, right? You're gonna tweet or do you still call it a tweet?
Yeah,
Do we
I'll
call
throw,
it
I'll
an
throw
X?
it out.
What do we call it these days?
Yeah, I was keeping it for tonight, but I'll throw that up. Sort of maybe as we go through, I'll maybe even throw it up as we're chatting now, and we'll see if anyone wants to have their 2 cents on it as we're talking.
I don't think we have anything else we need to talk about on the league now because that graph kind of helped us talk about everything. So I'm going to move us on. We're going to look at go across the water and take a look at the NHL as it currently stands as of today. Starting off in the Eastern Conference in the Atlantic Division, the Toronto Maple Leafs are sitting top with 42 games played and 56 points. The Florida Panthers are sitting in second with 42 games played, 52 points, and the Boston Bruins are in third with 43 games played, 45 points. In the Metropolitan Division, the Washington Capitals are sitting top with 41 games played, 58 points. The New Jersey Devils are in second with 43 games played, 53 points, and the Carolina Hurricanes are in third, 41 games played and 50 points. The 2 wildcard spots at the moment, as it currently stands, are Tampa Bay and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Across the country, then, in the western side of things, in the Central Division, the Winnipeg Jets are sitting top in first place with 42 games played, 58 points. Minnesota Wild continue their run, and they're in the second place with 41 games played, 56 points. And the Dallas Stars are in third with 39 games played and 51 points. Pacific Division and sitting in first there, the Vegas Golden Knights are 40 games played and 59 points. Edmonton Oilers are in second with 40 games played and 53 points. And the Los Angeles Kings are in third, 38 games played, 51 points. Wildcard spots held by Colorado and Vancouver Canucks. Where should we start? I suppose I'm going to start us off in the Atlantic Division just because we've obviously got some changes there in relation to the Toronto Maple Leafs taking that top spot for the first time in a long while. Plus 17 diff and 17-7-0 for home. And their last streak is 7-3-0 with 5 games winning streak at the moment. I just want to say it because they're on top form right now. And I am obviously over the moon about that. But it's a tasty affair there, and I'm very happy. Anybody got any other points in anywhere else in the league they're looking at? I'm looking towards the Metropolitan Division 2 and the Washington Capitals, and currently sitting in first. Anybody else?
Cap's biggest thing, Ovi's back. The race is back on. Like, let's just take a minute to realize that guy broke his leg a handful of weeks ago, and there were probably corners who were thinking, right, the race is done. The race to tie Gretzky's tally is done for this season. Is it done entirely? Does he come back? Does he have a 25-26 season in him? And now he's got 23 goals, I think, to go. He didn't score last night, but it's definitely still on, to the point that the league are actually now posting the potential games, the list of potential games towards the back end of the regular season where they reckon he might do it. Now, I tongue-in-cheek put that in our group chat last night, and I did notice that they're not playing the Preds, so actually that's a piece of history that thankfully we will probably not be part of this season. But in the middle of all those fixtures, they are playing the Minnesota Wild. So let me just reiterate what I said in the group chat. Dave, I hope he scores all 23 against the Wild.
The Wild are doing well. I was waiting because Marty was asking there, what about the other divisions? I was waiting for Dave to jump on the Wild talk there.
Yeah, 20 was it 4-game win streak. Had a bit of a blip, but look at that Central Division though. 42 games for 58 points. Sorry, for Winnipeg Jets, 56 points for the Minnesota Wild, and then 51 for the Dallas Stars. It's absolutely bonkers. You think if you're going a bit of a run of 4 or 5 that you might be able to do something about it, but not in that Central Division because everybody goes on a run at the same time. So it's been a really good year for the Wild. Nice solid setup with everybody they have. Krill is still out injured, so our top goal scorer is still out. I think he's due back this week, I think it is. So hopefully we can keep those points going. But the Wild are doing really well. They're 10-4-0. It's not too bad. So or 6-4-0. Sorry.
And I say this lovingly, if there's any of those games, like the one that's on the March 20th, that Ovi's going to score all 23 games, it's probably going to be against the Flyers. But as I was messaging you before, I love to see that about the Wild, because I'm hoping to go see a Boston Wild game at the start of February, and that will make for a very interesting game with those results.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with a Wild game. Plus, they can drink from our last experience.
Yeah.
No,
That's
not
right.
all of them. That one guy can drink.
At this stage, I'll have gone to 2 Wild games, and I've never been to a Flyers game.
You've been to more Preds games than Flyers games?
With our Preds, and I've been to multiple Bruins games at that point. So
you need to change work and find somewhere that's got a headquarters in Philly.
In Philly.
Yeah, just get up there. Boys, anybody else got anything on the league tables before we move on? No. Great. Okay. Well, with that, then let's get moved on and get stuck into our period 1 of hockey. All right, period 1 is a roundup of news stories from around the UK. I'm going to lead us off only because, John, you kind of mentioned this earlier on, and since our last podcast, a lot has happened, particularly for the Fife Flyers. Fife Flyers have had a number of issues, including a mass walkout, shall we say, of players who have decided to up and leave. We have had a change of coaching in the Fife Flyers as well. And one of the big things since our last recording was the big decision that was taken by the Elite League Standards Committee, who agreed to defer a 1-game suspension for Ryan Foss following a Department of Player Safety decision back in the middle of December. This was to ensure that the Fife Flyers were not at risk of falling below minimum bench levels for the Christmas period. We should also mention that the Elite League also gives special dispensation to the Fife Flyers to basically bypass the number of players that were allowed to be hired for one team.
Number of imports.
Yeah. They also give Fife Flyers special permission pretty much to bring in more over the set amount that were allowed because of what they call exceptional circumstances that have happened. I guess what they're trying to do is make sure that the Fife Flyers are able to still continue, so that there's a 10-team league to the end of this season. Fife are in a lot of trouble right now. We can see that through their standings in the league. We can see that through what's happening off ice in terms of the backstage stuff. What's your thoughts, boys? John, being a Fife fan yourself.
Whoa, what?
Our foreign correspondent.
You're a resident Fife fan.
I am a fan who lives in Fife. Let's just make that incredibly clear right now. Listen, there's a lot to unpack.
If he moves his head a bit to the side, you can see the merch and stuff that's behind him.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And the pads? Are they pads?
Gloves?
No, there's no pads. Why would I have pads? The stick and the gloves are flyer from an equipment sale like 3-4 years ago.
You actually bought them. You spent
yeah.
on them. You parted cash. So you're a fan.
Honestly, the gloves were like 15 quid and the stick was a $5.
There's also there's also probably multiple Fife jerseys in that room too somewhere.
Not in the room.
Do you have a Fife?
I own two.
And do you have a Fife hat?
I don't, and that's the thing. They actually have a couple of really nice hats, but I'm on the journey of getting hats. Yeah, that one's a Steelers hat, and that's a Clan hat.
So tell us now more about how you're not a Fife fan.
I would have put a Fife hat before a Steelers.
I've won the Steelers one on the podcast before. Anyway, there's a lot to unpack with what's going on in Fife. So let's start with the departure, the mutual departure, or so the news story said, of Tom Cullen from the team. That happened just after our last podcast. It happened on the 20th of December. Obviously, things were not going very well. The Flyers were on 6 points. The Flyers are still on 6 points, so things have not gotten any better. The Kazakh players had, at this point, all decided to depart, citing serious cultural differences, not being able to, language barrier, not being able to settle into Kirkcaldy. Yep. Now, let's be totally honest. There's people from other parts of Fife who would struggle to settle into Kirkcaldy. It's an acquired taste, let's say. But it doesn't help the Flyers with what's going on. They've temporarily put Johnny Curran in charge of the bench. He's off injured at the minute. So isn't actually able to take part in on-ice training. So the guy that the Fife Flyers fan base got their backs up about not moving on is back running on-ice training. Todd Dutium is back on the ice running on-ice training. Then we got the announcement of the additional import allowance. So far, I think I'm right in saying that we've had no additional import. Or no, sorry, there's been one additional import has been brought in. A European lad has been brought in, and he has cleared all of his paperwork. I think he played last weekend as well. So they've still got at least another one that the league are allowing them to backfill. Then we had the announcement of the ban being put back. Now, that's an interesting one on its own. We'll unpack that one in a minute. But then we had the announcement of a number of two-ways that were announced. Now, the initial announcement about the suspension of the suspension was to make sure that the Flyers could put out what they deemed as a sporting competitive team against the Belfast Giants. My issue with that is that if any other team couldn't field any imports, let's say, for example, would they get the same dispensation? Probably not. This is a direct result of a lack of depth within the Flyers squad, with a problem in the GB recruitment that was done by the Fife Flyers this season. There was a heavy reliance on those Kazakh imports in particular, and young Brits especially, were left languishing with no space in the team and therefore went and signed elsewhere. Now, they've had to lean very heavily on the likes of the Kestrels. They've brought in a couple of young lads from the Kestrels to bolster numbers. It smacks of big, big problems. Now, in amongst all of that, we finally, for the first time in months, heard from the ownership. Tom Muir and his other partner, whose name escapes me at the minute, put out a statement through the Flyers social media and basically said, we know this is really tough right now. We are grateful for the fans that are still behind the squad, but we are still committed to the Elite League, because there were a lot of rumblings about, was this it? Was this the Fife Flyers bowing out of the Elite League? The statement from Tom Muir suggests that it was incredibly close. And a post-game interview that was done just a couple of days later by Todd Dutium suggests that it was teetering on the edge of the Flyers collapsing. That seems to be the insinuation, is that the Flyers could have entirely collapsed out of the Elite League had it not been for this dispensation that had been given to the Flyers for additional imports and for suspensions to be pushed back and all the rest of it. It's an incredibly poor situation. The other thing I know that's had an impact on is the gate. The gates for these games are now shocking. It's back to the bad old days in Kirkcaldy. We had a period last season where they were selling out continually because of let's call it the Cullen effect. It didn't matter that they were languishing. It didn't matter that they weren't really being a fantastic hockey team, but there was buzz. That buzz is gone. It's been incredibly short-lived. I don't think we've heard the end of this. I think if they see through to the end of this season, I think it would be nice to think that we're going to get some sort of statement of intent at the end of the season about what they intend to do going forward. Do they hit the 25-26 Elite League season, or do they decide to do something else? I don't know. From an Elite League perspective, I want to see 10 teams. As a Fife guy, not a Fife fan, I want to see the Flyers in the Elite League because that organization, maybe not this ownership, maybe not this organization the way that it currently is, but the Fife Flyers belongs in the Elite League.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, John. They definitely deserve top flight hockey in Kirkcaldy. For a team of that pedigree, as in, what, 1930, was it?
Something like that. 1938.
Yeah, they definitely deserve to be in top flight hockey, and it'd be remiss if they weren't.
Do you know what? The biggest thing I would miss them for is their jersey designs, because they've got some of the best jerseys in the Elite League, and the league would be worse for them leaving just for that reason.
Dave, let's
I know
get your thoughts.
we talked.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry. No,
Go ahead, Aaron. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
We're all being polite. I was
Shut up!
back to when we were texting about it at the time, and I think we all had different thoughts on it. Really, I was more of, if it was that the Flyers were on the edge of collapse, and this is what had to happen to make sure that they didn't collapse and they stayed in the league. That obviously there needs to be a hell of a lot of improvement elsewhere, but if this stopped them from that at that point collapsing, I was okay with it. But I appreciate John's sentiment of, would any other team get that?
Yeah.
But any other team isn't at that, at like 6 points.
But let's argue the other side then.
Yeah.
Let's say we've only played half of the season. This injuries, walkouts, whatever else could happen to any other team in the league now. The Elite League Standards Committee, by making that decision, have they effectively increased the import limit for this season?
No. Unless
Why?
something.
Why not? Why not?
Because-
The implication is that if you're in a tight space, you can ignore the rules. This is a particular problem of this league. We continually say it time and time again that transparency is a massive problem. This was a decision taken, yes, for the benefit of the Fife Flyers to maintain 10 teams in the league. If the Sheffield Steelers suddenly have a run of injuries, a run of terrible season-ending injuries for some of their big imports, are the leagues seriously going to say, nah, that's different? Like, you can't have any more imports. Of course they're not. What that decision has done has shadow increased the import limit for this season.
Yeah.
There is no other way of interpreting that.
It's always going to be difficult. Me and Marty have been here before. Basingstoke did this 2006, and they hemorrhaged players. They hemorrhaged players to Belfast. 3 at least came to Belfast. Campbell, Thorts, and Stevie Lang came to Belfast, leaving a Basingstoke team that was teetering on collapse. The league did, from memory, step in and allow them some dispensation. However, that was the last we've seen of them in the league, showing that extra dispensation doesn't necessarily work. All it does is allow them to lurch to the next season. There's no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet.
I was actually just about to, before I rudely interrupted Aaron, I was actually just about to ask Dave. Actually, I was actually about to just comment to see about something quite similar to what you just said about, where we've been here before.
Talk about Hull as well.
Well, if you think about it, we've been here. We've seen this before. We've seen it with like even the Vipers, Newcastle Vipers. The struggle there. We've seen it with Manchester previously. We've seen Manchester Phoenix, which now the Storm. We've seen that happen. And if you remember that playoffs of that year where the chance in the crowd was just 16 league, you're having a laugh. I mean, we've been at this point before where there's been serious amounts of struggling, and we've seen teams not able to get past that brink and survive. My concern is that Fife, as they currently stand, are a team that can't put together wins. If it continues for the last half of this season, 6 points isn't good enough. If they can't improve in the second half of this season, the gate is going to go down. People aren't going to attend. There's not going to be seats. There's not going to be bums in seats. That's going to have a financial impact on the team. And if you think about financially, if you're going to have struggles financially with the team, there has to be serious considerations either given. To ownership needs to really seriously consider next season what they do in terms of mass changes to that team. Do they look for someone else to buy into the team? Do they get more sources? Or do they just basically put up their hands and say, you know what, we're at a point where we don't think we can effectively compete at this level as it stands at this moment. Let's take a break and relook at it in about a year's time. Who knows?
Go ahead,
John.
Do you think that this team, the Flyers, as they currently stand, the 23-24 season, they had the cooling effect?
Mm-hmm.
That continued on at the start of this season because people expected big things of Tom's recruitment. If you suggest, and as you're saying, that let's say they limp through to the end of the season, maybe scoring up to 10 points, 12 points. Let's say they get a couple of wins here and there. I honestly can't see them doubling their points at this point.
I don't.
But let's say they lurch through. Let's say they play every game. They fulfill their commitment to the league for this season. They're going to need serious change regardless. Is the fan base willing to accept the risk that will come with that? Because there is a wholesale change is required unless they can get an A-list coach and they can put out the PR material in the summer that they always consistently lack to try and whip up that interest. There are I have serious concerns about where the Flyers go next season if they decide to stay in the Elite League, because I think the gate will be incredibly low at the start of the season. The expectations will be low. There are other options for people in Kirkcaldy and in Fife to go to instead. They do occasionally tend to clash with things like Wraith Rovers games. So, look, there are other options for people. This isn't an enclosed market like you have in some other places. They're not an arena team. They're relying on a few thousand people coming in every night to pay the bills and keep the lights on. And I have serious concern about where they go from here, unless Johnny Curran turns out to be the silver bullet, which I don't think he is. He is the best option they have right now. I have a serious concern about where this team goes next season. If they even stay in the Elite League.
I stand by the fact that I think it's more than just a coaching thing that needs to be done. I think no matter what coach you bring in, I think it's a financial thing too for Fife. And I genuinely believe that ownership and top level behind the thing that needs to have a serious consideration about how they move forward. But
that's the other point. Right now, if you're an outside investor, do you want to invest in that?
Nope.
With the guys who are currently running it? No, of course you don't.
It's
not a marketable product to put on the market and try and bring money in right now.
And while we might have a soft spot and we might like Fife as a team and we have a soft spot for them, if you look at it in the harsh light of day and you look at it from a realistic point of view, it's not a viable business.
It's looking very much like the Edinburgh Capitals.
We just need to message Ryan Reynolds. He'll buy them, right? Like he bought a really low football team.
We need a hockey guy. We need Will Ferrell.
Yeah, okay, we'll get Will Farrell to buy them and invest, because like you say that about where they're standing and stuff like that and the investment. I'm just thinking back to like when the stocks, like the actual financial being, when you want to buy stocks, you want to buy in the dip. Is that
the best way to encapsulate Fife is you compare their team to their car park. They haven't had investment for decades, and that started. This issue didn't start last season, the season before that. It started 10 years ago. This started before they joined the Elite League. There's an entire lack of investment for the club, and it's a shame because Fife, when they joined the Elite League, came off the back of a few fantastic seasons.
BNL championships. They were a big fish in a small pond, and they found themselves immediately being the small fish in a much bigger pond when they took the step up.
it was built on the back of young Scottish players, and
Yep.
they, as soon as they got the opportunity to sign imports, they did.
I think I still think that one of the biggest mistakes that was made this year, and John, you touched upon it. I think one of the biggest mistakes and one of the clear indications of where the team was going this year, which I think was a wrong footing, was the fact when they decided at the start of the season, whenever they were doing their hiring, that they decided to overlook their local homegrown talent, which has always been a key thing for them. When they decided to overlook them completely this season, and like, I think that was a massive point where there was like, this is the first point where you've kind of maybe made a bit of a boo-boo. I think you've maybe made a bit of a mistake here, and it's just continued throughout the season so far. Yeah, guys, we could talk about this all night, and we do need to move on to some other stories. But
Sorry, go for it.
okay,
go for it.
You can both have a point each. Aaron, we'll go you first.
We've talked about this previously. Let's say it could be any team. Doesn't have to be the Fife. But if this, let's say Fife gets sorted and things improve, it could happen to another team down the line. Does it not need to be take a step back and what are we doing as a league? Like, I'm pretty sure this season we've talked about, is there should there be a step up and a step down between the EIHL and the NIHL? So if you're at the bottom of the league, do you get relegated?
We've talked about promoting relegation, but that doesn't work with some of the NIHL teams because they just don't. Their ranks and arenas for a couple of them, if we're being really kind, they don't meet the requirements of
There's also
what would be expected of an elite league team.
There's also the flip side of that is, say the Giants have a bad season, you're not going to get NHL and NIHL teams traveling to Belfast.
Well, imagine last season.
Never going to happen.
What happened in Nottingham last season? Did the Nottingham Panthers get relegated to the NIHL? I can't see it. My point was to actually bring us back to the suspension before we move on. And it was one key element was that the decision was made by the Standards Committee and agreed by the Belfast Giants. Let's be totally upfront and say that the Belfast Giants agreed to this. So as Belfast Giants fans, we're not having a cry about the situation that he was allowed to play against Belfast. The issue for me is that the reason was given so that the Flyers weren't at risk of falling below minimum bench strength numbers over the Christmas period, because obviously their rosters and everything else was a problem. Almost immediately after this announcement was made, the Flyers made two-way announcements to bring young guys from SNL and NIHL teams. They were nowhere near minimum roster numbers at that point, but Ryan Foss was still allowed to play. He was, in fact, instrumental in the game and had an assist on the goal, on the Flyers' first goal. So he was instrumental in that game for the Flyers. If they go on a run, can you imagine the complaining that would go on? Now, the other side of it is, they still haven't announced when he serves this ban, because he has played in subsequent games. So my understanding will be that he will serve a suspension in a game against the Belfast Giants, because that's what should have happened. But in the meantime, there's been no issue. Now, the other side of it is he was banned by the Department of Player Safety. He was banned and he had the repercussions of that ban because there was a player safety issue. Yet again, I think this is a... Now, I know that this isn't DOPS in particular. DOPS made their decision. They said ban him. The league made the decision that that player safety issue was no longer a problem. What was a problem was potentially a team not being able to ice a squad. Instead, the business was more important than the players' safety on the ice. And that might be a massive step for me to take, and it might be a really, really hot take, but that's what a lot of people have read into that, and I think that's a really valid argument.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else for anything before we move on? No? Let's move on, John, to your next two stories. Well, you've got three stories, but let's do the two signings that have happened over the last week this last few days.
Last couple of days. So yesterday we got the announcement from the Guildford Flames that they have signed Canadian defenseman James Shearer. I think there was some funny business with their posts as well, given that he is Shearer as well. I think that was quite interesting. I saw it. Have you actually noticed that? So Tasty Guildford social admin seems to be back again. There's a lot of interaction going on socials again with the sort of funny, interactive Guildford. It's really, really nice to see again. They are back, and it's nice to see. So James Shearer has come from the ECHL Utah Grizzlies before a stint in Hungary, and then he has made his way to the UK. He spent last season with the Coventry Blaze and iced 50 games in league and cup competition and scored 3 goals and 15 points total. Separate to that, literally as we came, or maybe about an hour before we came online, the Cardiff Devils also announced the appointment of Canadian forward Brad Schoenbert for the remainder of the season. The 27-year-old forward was most recently with the Kansas City Mavericks in the ECHL. Last season was his first pro, and he scored 9 goals and 12 assists for 21 points in 43 games for the Mavericks. So, changes are starting to be rung.
I was muted. Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, this is, it's clearly we come to this point, and this is where teams will start to think, right, we have the run in now towards this tail end of the season. We want to make sure we have our run going to ensure we have the strength we need. Cardiff are clearly just thinking themselves, right, we need to make sure that we continue on the current form. What do we need in order to keep doing that? Guildford thinking, well, we've started a little bit of a trend. We're starting to kind of head a wee bit of an upward trajectory, as your graph showed us earlier. And maybe they're thinking, right, we need to kind of bolster that by bringing in the right signings. Do we see, the question will be, obviously the Elite League does have they do have a, like a, what do you call it, the signing,
it's like a signing
window.
deadline.
Yeah, deadline. Do we see more teams moving in that direction before the end of, I think it's usually around about the end of January, I think, is it?
I would be shocked.
It's about now that the Giants buy the league, isn't it? Is that what they normally tell us?
Well, clearly, yeah.
They're just writing the check at the minute. It just takes so long to put all those zeros on it.
I was actually going to suggest another team that are probably looking to do exactly that is going to be Sheffield.
That's it.
They are probably not. Yeah, they are probably not where they expect to be right now.
No.
Yes, they've had a little run of results. I think are they 5 wins on the bounce now. Over the Christmas period, they had a rough December. I think they had 4 or 5 losses in a row that kind of bumped them down the table a little bit. But now 5 or 6 wins on the trot is seeing them, plus the big win against Belfast in Belfast. So I would be shocked if they're not in the market looking for something or someone who is available who can add to what Aaron Fox thinks that they are missing. Obviously, the Fife Flyers will be in the market, but it remains to be seen what trash can they're going to pull someone out of who's going to want to come and play the rest of the season in Fife, given their current position. And the middle teams absolutely will be looking on the market because of that really tight fight for playoffs. They're going to be looking to add to their arsenal as much as they can in that lead up to deadline day, which
100%.
I think, if memory serves, is it towards the end of January?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think it is towards the end of January. I think it's usually around about that final weekend, usually. Could be wrong. Someone can correct us if we are wrong. But yeah, I think it usually is towards the end of January.
As we usually are.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move on to our last story for this period. We're sticking with you, John. One last story.
Yeah, so this was the news. The Moran family have received Gary Moran's certificate to acknowledge his induction, which was previously announced into the UK Ice Hockey Hall of Fame for 2024. Moran sadly passed away 3 years ago, was a huge character in British ice hockey for over 30 years, most notably, of course, with the Nottingham Panthers. He took the club from being a rink side to one of the most successful arena clubs in the country. So during face-off between the Nottingham Panthers and the Sheffield Steelers, the family came on the ice and the certificate presentation was made by Panthers owner Neil Black. He presented the family with the certificate to Gary's wife Audrey, son Paul, who played for the Panthers and the Steelers, and Paul's daughters Bo and Bella. So I thought that was worthy of just mentioning there. He's obviously Gary was part of the 2024 induction into the UK Hall of Fame, and his family get to receive that certificate on his behalf because obviously, sadly, he's not there to receive it.
Yeah, well deserved. And yeah, I think you've put it really well there. I don't think there's
Was
anything
it
else.
30? Was it 30 years? How many years was he with the Panthers?
I mean, all said and done, probably the guts of like high 20 years. I think he would have been with the Panthers. They'd existed
That's
before
amazing.
that. They'd
Yeah,
be
yeah.
a smaller club in the smaller rink in Nottingham before the whatever it's called arena is where it currently is now. But he helped to build that club and helped to make it a club that fills that arena night on and night out. So yeah, and plus I think he was involved with some of the GB stuff as well. I think he had not a big hand in the GB stuff, but obviously being the one of the guys behind the anchor tenants in Nottingham there, Nottingham being one of the centres for Team GB, then I'm sure he had some involvement there as well.
Yep. Boys, anything else for this period before we move on? No? Great. Well, with that then, let's round off period 1 and let's get stuck into our period 2 of hockey. And the video has moved, so I need to find it. There it is.
Hello, and welcome to period 2 of hockey. So this is where we'll talk about international hockey, so everywhere outside of the United Kingdom. And I'll kick us off with a piece that I've put in. Shock horror. Did anybody see the announcement of some of the outdoor games?
Yep.
2 outdoor games in Florida in February next year, 2026. I think that would be a nice wee trip.
Is that a hint, Dave?
Wink, wink, wink.
I mean, we're all of the. Well, I don't think John is, but we're all of the 1985 crew here, right? So this year's a big 4-0. So we need somehow to celebrate.
We need to plan it out, yeah. So there's a game. Marty doesn't want to talk about it. 2021 for everybody.
In denial about going to Florida, or in denial about the big 4-0?
The 4-0.
Yeah.
You guys are so old.
Oh, burn it. So yeah, 1 game in Tampa, 1 game in Miami. You couldn't go wrong. You got to make a week out of that. It'd be phenomenal.
The only problem would be is that the games are completely a month apart. The first game, the Miami one, is the traditional Winter Classic, which is usually held on New Year's Day. It's been moved this year. It's been moved next year to January 2nd, and that will be the NHL Winter Classic, which will see the New York Rangers versus the Panthers in Miami. I suppose I think the main one is like, I think, okay, it's moving down to Miami and Florida, but boys, like Florida, like, it's not the real.
Where was the last ODR, the outdoor rink game that they did? Was it in Tampa where the rink kept melting?
They had to do it at nighttime. Do you remember? It was a nighttime.
Have you
It
not
was
seen
supposed to be a
temperature
daytime.
in Florida right now? It's freezing in Florida right now.
Climate change is helping. That's
So
fine.
where was it? LA? Where was it? There was definitely. It was one of
It was
the
a
most
good game in
recent
LA.
ones
Yeah,
where they had to do where the game had to be moved to like 10 o'clock at
It had to
night.
be moved to the next night. It was supposed to be, I
Yes.
think, that our time, it was supposed to be the Friday night or the Saturday night, Saturday daytime, and it ended up having to be moved to the Sunday night their time because the rink just disintegrated. It was an absolute nonsense. They just could not keep it frozen. So they had to do it at night. Temperatures dropped right down, and even at that, the rink was still choppy. It wasn't a good spectacle. It was a horrible, horrible game.
And I love the fact that Aaron says it's freezing in Florida. It's 20
Right now.
degrees.
No, Fahrenheit.
No, Celsius.
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 I thought it was 30 Fahrenheit.
No, It's 19 degrees Celsius
That's why you
right
keep
now.
going places with the wrong clothes.
I literally just googled it to see what it is. It's
Yeah.
like-
Um,
It's freezing in Florida at the moment. Why did I
I
think
guess
Here,
the
can
big
I point out? Can I point out? Boston getting another special one-off game.
yeah.
No way.
Honestly, come on.
Next thing we'll hear is it's going to be Detroit will get another one and spend their life in outdoor rinks.
I mean, the one thing is we can talk about obviously the fact that this is going to be the most southernmost point they've ever played an outdoor game, in the NHL. It's going to be
the
obviously
Gulf of America.
obviously the big question will be, obviously the weather wise, how do they put together, this outdoor game given the weather in Florida. But I suppose the big question I suppose people are asking right now is the fact that like is this a push as like a almost some kind of like almost as like a
Is that a market
spectacle
check?
in a way, because the viewership of the current Winter Classic as it currently stands seems to have definitely dipped. Or
Well,
the
this year's
interest-
was the lowest. This
Mm.
year's was the lowest
yeah.
of all of them. It was hundreds of thousands down as
Mm.
far as viewership's concerned. People, they've become less of a spectacle because they're just regular season games. So they're nothing special. The guys come out, they play 60 minutes, they go off the ice. Like, yes, there might be fireworks, it's outside, it looks really nice. But unless you're actually getting tickets to go, which I actually saw a couple of Belfast Giants fans were at this year's Winter Classic. Fair play to them. But yeah, I don't know what they have to do to market the Winter Classic and the Stadium Series to make them more interesting. Right now, the ones that I am consistently more interested in is the Global Series, because I'm always interested about where they go. I'm interested about not the spectacle of it being outdoors, about it being this whole thing about being an outdoor rink. If you want to do an outdoor rink and you want it to be really good, go to Quebec. They know how to do outdoor rinks there. They've got the weather for it. Go and do it there. But the NHL is allergic to Quebec, as we know. But the Global Series is more interesting because we get to see arenas and rinks across mostly Europe where we would never expect to see these teams playing. And that, to me, is more interesting than playing in a baseball field.
Yeah.
The big draw for those games, any of the outdoor games, as you said there, John, is to get it in front of a wider audience, as in bums on seats. Because whenever they do them in the outdoor rinks, some of these stadiums are absolutely massive.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen this comment. I had to put it up. Thank you, Anthony. Yep. Yep. I suppose John, you were saying there, obviously the Global Series, obviously it does bring the NHL outside of the US and brings them across into European territories. We've seen Australia and stuff covered as well in the Global Series.
Japan as well, yeah.
Japan. So it's always great to have them across this direction. And we know we'll find out, obviously, the Global Series teams will be hopefully around about maybe March time, I think, is roughly whenever they do come out. And we know kind of like what next season is going to be set for Global Series. So we always like to pay attention to the teams that are put together for the Global Series. So we'll look forward to that when that comes around.
But yeah, it's always, those outdoor games are always a draw just to get bums on seats and sell tickets to people who wouldn't normally go. And that's generally the purpose, more than getting them on TV.
Yeah.
But anyway. So, John, I believe you have some news from the Conti Cup.
Yeah. So news had been rife in the sort of the days between Christmas and New Year that there was a potential problem with the Conti Cup final to be held in Cardiff this weekend. It certainly turns... Sorry, not this weekend, next weekend, I should say. The 16th... the 16th, 18th and 19th of January. The Kazakh team, HC Arlan, are unable to come to Cardiff. They've been unable to... My understanding is that they have been unable to secure visas for their players to come and play in Cardiff. Now, it's not been confirmed, but it's very likely that a big issue with that is that they have several Russian and Belarusian skaters on their team, and it's very, very unlikely that they would have been granted work visas for the UK, and that, therefore, is the reason that they are not coming. It had been looked at that potentially there was maybe a way to bring in a replacement team, maybe a team that had been knocked out in the earlier stages of the Conti Cup. However, that apparently was not possible, and that means that the final will now be competed between 3 teams. That will be GKS Katowice, who we know very, very well here in Belfast, Brewers de Loops, who I've probably butchered that name, and the Cardiff Devils. They will all compete for the Dinner Plate of Champions next weekend in
Dinner Plate of
Cardiff.
Destiny. So does that mean everybody walks away with a medal then?
Pretty much, you've got a medal just by turning up at
That's
this
not too
point. So now, this is one of the biggest things is that Arlan were seen as being one of the big front runners to win the tournament. So now, the Devils have had to come out with tickets and things. Obviously, people had bought weekend passes and all the rest for all of the games. There should have been, what would that be, 5 games? Something like that across the turn. No, more than that. 6 games?
2 games. Yeah, 6 games, 2 games per day.
Six games. So that's now down to 3 games. And they are not refunding, is the interesting part. They are providing a game pass to a Cardiff Devils game. And they're specifically, for season ticket holders, they're specifically looking at their playoff quarterfinals and the Challenge Cup semi-final games. And they're saying that that's the games that those tickets or those vouchers can be used for instead. So now, rather than having a weekend full of games, you've got 1 game on the 16th of January, 1 game on the 18th, and 1 game on the 19th. And all games now have been moved to the evenings to try and make them more appealing to a bigger crowd to fill the... Is it still called the Vindico? I can't remember what it's called now, who sponsors that arena. But they're trying their best to make it as big an event as possible. But do you think we've obviously all got experience of the Conti Cup in different formats, whether it's being away in Germany, or for a couple of us being in Germany a couple of times, or experiencing the Conti Cup in Belfast. Do you think losing that basically half the games, do you think that has a big impact on how that weekend's going to feel?
I think it will do. I mean, what has traditionally been a full-on proper hockey weekend where you have 2 games per day, you've got that excitement of the early game followed by the evening game. It's just there's something about that day where you kind of you stay out from an early point to watch 2 games, and then it's just there's just a different feel to it. And I think this definitely does have an impact because it'll feel like it's a bit almost like, I don't know, it just feels like it's a bit of a it does.
It's a normal double header. It's like a normal double header weekend.
Exactly. Exactly. But this must be, I mean, from a business point of view and from the Cardiff Devils point of view, this whole thing must be a proper headache. Like I was reading through the details of like how they were explaining the tickets and how the tickets are going to work and how the refunds are going to work, and about like, if you lived outside the UK, you're going to get a partial refund. If you're a season ticket holder, this is going to happen. If you weren't a season ticket holder, this is going to happen. I mean, the logistics of trying to get that put together must have been a nightmare. And I'm sure they said, please don't contact the office. I am sure they are still getting bombarded by people kind of going, what does this mean for me?
Yeah.
But is it if you've bought a weekend pass that you're either going to get a voucher? Because it does say here there's some options there. This game is not taking place, therefore you will get a full refund. Like on the website.
There are I think what they expect is that there might be some like 1 game only. Obviously, they know if there's been 1 game only tickets. So sorry, I said they weren't issuing refunds for the tournament pass. They're not issuing refunds for one-off games that are no longer going ahead. That were specific to Arlan. They are offering refunds for those. They're also offering partial refunds for people who live outside of the UK as well. if they have bought a tournament pass, because obviously these guys are traveling over. They've expected 3 full days of hockey. What they're getting is 3 evenings of hockey instead. So they're making a hit there. I assume that's going to have a fairly substantial financial hit for the Cardiff Devils. Unless these fans are all going to come and drink incredibly heavily. Dave, I'm just going to throw this comment up because I see you ruffling it there, and we're getting you've got a 7-8 Bison jersey on full display with the Kestrel FM logo.
Yeah, it is indeed. Yeah, that was the other part of it is how much does it diminish the prestige of winning it if you do win it, because you've taken away probably the biggest competitor that was in the competition, and then you've played against. So whoever wins it's going to feel like they're a bit of a sham trophy.
No. If the Cardiff Devils win it, it doesn't count. If any other team wins it, fair play.
It's a bit like the COVID Cup.
Yep.
Yeah. That wasn't a league trophy. So it seems sort of, in my opinion, it's the same way it would feel like. It's just not the same.
The one thing I would say that stood out to me kind of wasn't the way it was written, was the one about, just before we move on to from this story, just the comment that was made, or the section where it says if you have tickets for the Saturday afternoon game, and it states on the thing that the Cardiff Devils put, it says this game is moved from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. and your ticket remains valid for this game at the new face-off time. No refunds will be offered because this game is still going ahead. It just feels very aggressive. Like, they have this assumption that by moving the shift in that game, that the people who bought tickets for this early face-off, like, so if you imagine like you're like, say it was the likes of me wanting to bring my son to a game, I would only take him to an early game. I would only take him to a game maybe that starts at 4 is the latest time I would take my son. Yes, he's only 9 months, so therefore he's pretty young, but I'd only take them to a very young game. And this is the same for anybody, any family. Some people do only take young families to those early face-off times. So if you had tickets for 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. face-off time, you probably thought to yourself, oh, that's brilliant. I can take my kids along to this one. It's a really friendly time to bring kids along to. Let's not get into a family sport thing, because that was a big argument online this week. But, the new face-off time, 6 p.m., may not suit everyone. So the fact that you're saying you're not getting a refund because the game is still going ahead, that is you being presumptuous to say that the people then can't, people might have had other things on and therefore that time doesn't suit. What about those people who that time doesn't suit for? Like, I think it's very unfair for them to say this game is going ahead, therefore you're not getting a refund from it. It's not going ahead. It's different. Well, it's going ahead, but it's a different time. And that should be taken into consideration.
In my opinion, they should have probably, if they could have, they probably should have kept those games at the same time and then done other events in the evening. But you never know. It's obviously a way to hopefully make more money and get more bums on seats, which is my very narrow-minded view of it, because it obviously means that, again, another instance.
But it's a weekend game. It's not like it's moving to an evening game for a Thursday or Friday where people would be normally in work. I appreciate there's retail and all that kind of stuff, but with a weekend, genuinely, if it's a 2 p.m. game, it would be the families and stuff like that. So you wonder, would they get more? Would they actually get more bums on seats because it's a 6 p.m. game?
Well, it's hard to obviously not being up in that chair, but it does again stink of what we were talking about earlier with Fife, that a business decision has maybe impacted people who are maybe impacted the hockey decision once again. So, anything else anybody would like to highlight or raise or talk about?
Just the one thing to highlight, and this is another comment from Anthony, because it was something I was going to mention, because I seen this today online when I was doing my homework for today's podcast, but I didn't add it, and I should have. But there is another IIHF event that has been affected by issues as well this week, and that was the World 2A Champs. There was a whole thing where it was supposed to be held in Australia, but it's basically came out to say that there's a whole concern around safety of Israel, and therefore they've had to move it away from being held in Melbourne because of these reasons. There's a lot more to the story, and I forgot to add it in, but just thought I'd mention it there because I know, Anthony, you mentioned it too. But yeah, IIHF having a bit of a mare of a week.
Okay, if we have nothing else, we can probably then move on to period 3.
Will do.
Welcome to period 3, our general Nocky
Nocky
news.
news.
Oh, that was smooth. That's the smoothest one in a long time because we're all back. Nocky News is for anything and everything else in the world of hockey that doesn't fit neatly into period 1 or period 2, or generally it's the dumping ground because we've just got too much stuff or we need a nice even spread across all 3 periods. Guys, third period tends to be a bit of fun, and actually it is a good bit of fun, this podcast around. Marty, I want to start with you because every single year you bring us the news of the Hershey Bears.
Yep, and I've done it again this episode, and this year, the Hershey Bears have held their annual teddy bear toss this past week, this past weekend, I should say, and they have yet again hit another world record for the number of stuffed toys that have landed on an ice rink. Described as sweet cuddly mayhem. 102,343 stuffed teddy bears were thrown onto the ice when the Hershey Bears scored their first goal against the Providence Bruins. It is an annual thing, which has been happening since 2001, and this year event beat the previous record, which set at 74,599, which was last year in 2024. So they have absolutely smashed that this year by almost, what's that, nearly 50, 25,000? Is that roughly?
Wow.
Nearly. I mean, that's crazy. But yeah, so this my thing is, the stuffed toys distributed across 35 local charities. But I mean, 35 charities getting 102,000 bears. I mean, that's still a lot of bears for 35 charities. But fair play. I mean, it's amazing. And the video is there. If you haven't seen the video, it's always a joy to watch. I mean, this year, the players were pretty much suffocated, shall we say, by the bears. I don't know how it's not becoming a health and safety issue in on itself for that exact reason. But boys, did you get a chance to watch the video?
I seen the netminder struggling to get his head above the cuddly toys. It looked like he was swimming, Scrooge McDuck in his coin pond. It was
amazing.
I didn't know this about it, but Anthony's thrown in the chat there that it almost went wrong. So apparently someone hit a post at one point, and people at the other end of the ring thought he'd scored and started throwing. So it just shows you it can go wrong.
Oh dear!
You'd love to be down at the ice to see all those teddies being thrown down.
I think the players genuinely love it. It's interesting that I don't know whether this is just certain fans, but I noticed in the video that a lot of the teddy bears aren't covered or in bags or anything. We always hear with our BIHL teddy bear toss events that they all have to be bagged up to protect them from the ice so they don't get wet. Whereas with the Hershey Bears are just give it to us.
Health and safety standards in the UK versus US has a big thing to play in that, Yeah.
I had a big question, and I've asked Google, and it's given me an answer. But how long does it take to clear all of the teddies?
That's what I wanted to know.
So I did ask
easily
Google,
10 minutes. Easily 10 minutes.
Easily. Now, Google has told me, and I don't know whether I believe it or not, because it's the AI response. Okay, right. Gemini, whatever you call it. They said it can take up to 50 minutes to clear it, which I think it can take up to 2 days to clear it. That's still true. It's still technically
50 minutes. If it's 50 minutes, you've got to bring the guys back out to warm up again.
Yeah, 40 minutes. Or Anthony's just said.
Oh my god, here we go. Anthony's giving it here. 40
Man
minutes.
in the know.
How do those guys carry on and play after that? That happens in the first period. So you're just getting started. Now, that I looked at the results for that game just out of interest. So that was the second goal of the game. The Hershey Bears had gone behind in that game to the Lee Valley Phantoms. And the goal came at 5:32 in the first. So they're only 5 minutes in. They're hyped up to play, and then they've got nearly an hour sitting.
I think it's better.
It's better
5 minutes. It's better 5 minutes in than really in the middle of the.
Well, it's
of
better
it
5 minutes
than
in than your team telling you that at a random stoppage in the third period you should throw your teddy bear because we no longer have confidence in our team to score a goal. Therefore, throw your teddies now. Teddies get thrown, all get cleared off the ice, then the team scores.
Oh,
You guys
dear.
remember when that happened?
Yeah. hmm
Me and Marty every year during the Belfast's Teddy Toss talk about it, and it's the away team. We wait to watch the away team to see if they help. And it was one year the Cardiff Devil, or not Cardiff Devils, the Coventry Blaze, all went and sat on the bench. And I was just like, oh, lost all respect for them whatsoever. Doing
Yeah,
that.
I
Unbelievable.
agree. The other thing that I joked around about with you boys in our WhatsApp group was the fact that, like, you know, there's an element of a jinx when it comes to the teddy bear tosses, i.e., there's a bit of pressure that's added on in relation to the teddy bear toss because you need to make sure that that goal is scored in order for those teddies to come over. And as you said, John, you know, God forbid that doesn't happen because that's just embarrassing. So there's a pressure there. But the other thing that tends to happen with the Belfast Giants, this seems to be like a historical trend, is that whenever the Giants org announces a post-game all-player signings, so like if players are going to stay behind after the games and sign stuff for fans, the Giants seem to, shall we say, not perform so well.
Lay an egg.
And we tend to maybe lose those games quite often. So on the day of the teddy bear toss this year, they also announced, oh, we're also going to have a player signing at the at the end of this game. So
Do you know what? They should have just brought out
get your
black
stuff
jerseys
signed by the
too.
players. And as soon as I see that, I just said to you guys, "Oh my god, like that's a double jinx! Like, are they really trying to stop?" Oh, anyway, that didn't happen. Successfully won, which is nice.
Guys, I'm going to move on. Another annual event now that we tend to sort of cover here on podcast is the Kalamazoo Wings. Their Rainbow Ice game is back, or actually has been back. It's already been played. It was played on the 4th of January. As we know, we are getting close to Pride Weekend in the Elite League. It will be officially, I believe it's the last weekend of the month. However, I'm led to believe that certain teams are playing their Pride games this weekend, which is odd, to be totally honest. We tend to expect it from the Cardiff Devils because they go with Cardiff Pride, which is in early February, so they tend to be a couple of weeks behind, so we never really expect to see their jersey until then. We've had a couple, and because Period 3 is my domain and I make the decisions here, I have decided not to bring up any of the Elite League Pride jerseys until Pride Weekend. So people out there will probably see some of the Pride jerseys before we get a chance to talk about them on the next podcast.
I mean,
because I've noticed a couple of them,
Five
including
Flyers.
the 5 Flyers one was announced today.
Yep.
So, but guys, the Kalamazoo Wings, they did their Rainbow Ice. I love to see this every single season.
Yeah, it's cool.
I would love to watch
It
a
is
game
cool
on
looking.
it. Sounds really random. I have never seen a game. Never watched the game. I've seen the ice a few seasons in the trot, but I've never watched a game.
Well, I'd always thought that they continued the flag right to the ends of the rink. I always thought it was like an end-to-end thing with the flag, but
Well, I think they changed it. I think last year they did. The only thing that was different was the end
Trapezoid.
piece was not the trapezoid, and the end parts were left clear, I think, for the netminders because they had to be clear about the lines and stuff. So I think they did go into the properly, like all the way through the offensive zones, but this year they've kind of stopped at the face-off circles and haven't gone all the way. But it's still an absolutely amazing thing. It's the 4th annual Rainbow Ice game that they've done. So they've been doing it now for 4 seasons, and it's definitely one of the highlights of the year to see that ice getting laid. And it's great. If you have a look at their X, you can actually see the time lapse. I love a rink time lapse. And you get to see the time lapse of them throwing the paint down on the ice, and it's great. It's actually really interesting watching them protect the blue lines as they paint it, so that the blue lines are very, very clear. So that if there's, say, a video review or anything, that the color isn't interfering with any potential calls for offside when it comes to the blue line. So it's really, really cool. Sorry, Aaron, you were going to say something.
Can anyone tell me what's going on the screen, on the big screen? What's the image? I appreciate it's the pride flag, but then there's like some sort of logo or.
I think what's happened is I'm zooming in on my screen. I think what's happened is the photo has been taken while the Kalamazoo Wings logo is transitioning. It's like an animation. So I think it's been taken while it's doing something, and that's why it looks a bit weird. But zooming in on my side, I can see it looks kind of like the Wings logo is emerging out of the rainbow.
Right. Okay. It kind of looks like a weird like Mario type animation. Do you know?
It does a bit.
Cool.
I think it's like it's glitching in.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Guys, while we're not going to look at the Pride jerseys this week, I do want to look at just one other jersey. It wouldn't be a Door 14 hockey podcast if we didn't look at least one jersey. Now, I could have gone back and looked at the special one-off Hogmanay jerseys that were worn by some of the Scottish teams, including the team stripes. They had a fantastic jersey that was created by a fan and got presented. It was, I believe, a Fife fan who created it, and they were presented with the jersey in Glasgow during their game. But the Belfast Giants did today, and we had quite a bit of chat on our group chat about the Valentine's jerseys that the Belfast Giants will wear for their Valentine's game. The bears that are drawn on the jersey have all been drawn by children at the I'm going to get the name wrong. It's the Sick Children's Hospital at the Royal Victoria, I believe. So it is. I think we all agreed for the first time in a long time on a jersey that this is a fantastic jersey, and we all want one.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, these jerseys are brilliant. As you say, all the bears have been drawn and designed by children specifically who have heart conditions, heart disease of some form, and that's where the whole idea comes from. The Children's Heartbeat Trust is part of the what's called the Clark Clinic, or the Clark Ward, which is the specialist cardiology clinic in the Royal Victoria Hospital, and they look after all of the children and the families who are affected by heart conditions of any kind and heart disease. So the work that they do is phenomenal for the families who avail of those services. So they have services right across from things like for any kids who maybe have to have planned surgery. The surgery happens in the south of Ireland, down in Dublin. It doesn't happen in Belfast. The Children's Heartbeat Trust will help with things like transport arrangements, will help with hotel stays in the Royal Victoria Hospital itself. They have a number of self-contained flats where if parents need to stay there with their children while they're in hospital, there's places where the family can go to sleep overnight. So they do a load of stuff for families. So the fact that the Giants have jumped on board and supported the Children's Heartbeat Trust this year is phenomenal. And these jerseys just are a statement piece, and they're, as you say, John, they're beautiful little jerseys, and fair play to the Children's Heartbeat Trust and those kids who have added their little touch with the little bears onto this. And I believe that the Belfast Giants fan, one of the Belfast Giants fans that we know quite well, Blake, I believe one of these bears belongs to him.
No way. Great.
Nice.
That's what I'm looking for. One of the things I'm looking forward to the most is when we actually see one. It's like, right, you stay there so I can look at all of the bears, because you can see some of them here, but like you just want to get in and actually see all of the designs. Look at this.
Actually, I think I can see Blake's. I think Blake's on the front here in the green, on the very, very bottom, beside the Belfast Harbour in the little green. I think it says 10 Blake. I think it says on it. So that's his in there. But yeah, I think it's quite cool.
I'm just zooming in on my screen. So the one in the bottom left, just beside the Belfast Harbour logo, is his.
I love the wee neck decoration, the wee heart. It's very adorable.
Yeah. And I think this is going to be part of a night for the obviously Children's Heartbeat Trust. I think it's to raise awareness obviously for that. But I think this is going to be a bigger night. From what I've read, I think this is going to be a bigger night for organ donation and blood donation and that type of thing as well. So I think that's maybe going to be part and parcel of an overall night, promotional night that the Giants are going to be doing on Valentine's, for the Valentine's themed night. So it'll be good.
Yep. Marty, with that, period 3 is over.
With that, yeah, period 3 is over, and with that, that means the end of this week's podcast. As usual, thank you very much for anyone who has tuned in tonight live with us. We appreciate you tuning in. For anybody who's listening, to the podcast as usual, the traditional podcast on Friday as it's released. Don't forget that you can always leave us a like, subscribe, or whatever it is on your podcast provider of choice. You can check out the content from this episode. You can check out other episodes on our website at door14hockey.com. We are on all of the social media channels out there, so don't forget to get involved. Send us your comments, your chats, your whatever it might be, your thoughts, opinions. We love to get in touch with us. We always like to hear from you guys, so do that, please. We're Door 14 Hockey, or yeah, we're at Door 14 Hockey on all social media channels, including our TikTok, Facebook, X, Instagram,
Blue Sky.
I think that's it. Yeah,
Blue
all
Sky
of the
as well.
above.
We're on Blue Sky.
So don't forget to do that. And as I said already, don't forget to leave us a comment or a like, whatever it is, on your podcast provider of choice. And if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button somewhere.
We're going to do that ticky-tock thing and just point around the screen.
Somewhere there. Yeah, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell thing for alerts whenever we go live, and whatever else the jargon is used by YouTubers. I'm not a YouTuber. With that, we'll sign off for this week. I'm Marty.
I'm Dave.
I'm Aaron.
John.
Have a great week.